DT English for students. We're going to do some practicing finding and analyzing syntax in passage 1 and in passage 2. If you remember, this first passage is talking about this father and son who go on these summer trips fishing and camping, and we find out that the 15-year-old son wants to bring his friend Bill Harper to fish. So if you remember, the boy is trying to figure out how he's going to tell his dad, and we went through that last week. But today I wanted you to look at the blue. The blue is examples of different types of syntax. All right, so this first one right here, where they start talking to each other. So he told him very casually. All right, so this is the son just saying, hey, I gotta figure out how to tell my dad, so I'm just gonna say it. Well, it's a very short sentence. And then you have the next one. He said Bill Harper's coming up tomorrow, and I thought maybe I'd go out with him. Now, if you'll notice, it doesn't have any comma. It doesn't have the quotation marks. So there's a break. There's a change in the pattern, because up here he's been using normal punctuation, but when he has dialogue between the son and the father, he doesn't use it. Again, this next one, he said, Bill Harper doesn't know very much about fishing, and I do, so I think if you don't mind, I'll get up early in the morning and meet Harper, and he and I will go fishing. Okay, if you notice, they haven't used the punctuation that we normally would look at. All right? And then the next paragraph here, for a little while his father didn't say a thing. Okay, we talked about that one before, but I just wanted to emphasize the father's having to think about what he's going to say and how he's going to react, right? Then you have a short sentence. Then he said, why, sure, go along, Joe. All right, so, but it's hard to read it without the punctuation. We don't know if he needs, why, sure, go along, Joe, or how he said it, but it's all strung together. And the next one, his father said, has Bill Harper got a rod? Oh, there's punctuation, but not anything else. He told his father, no, Bill hasn't got a rod. Well, said his father, why don't you take my rod and let Bill use yours? All right, so why do you think this author has taken out the quotation marks and the punctuation that helps us to know how and how this was said in the story? Down here at the bottom too, it says, the man in Colorado Springs carefully scraped the varnish off the rod and rewound it and revarnished it, and it came back glistening new each year. All right, so this one is another type of syntax. It's not necessarily the punctuation, but it's got some repetition. Right? So let's go back up here and figure out, well, why did he take out, what effect does it have for him to take out the punctuation? Well, maybe because they're both nervous, maybe they spoke real fast, or maybe they didn't pause when they normally would. There's different opinions. I don't necessarily think that not having punctuation helps in this, but it might give us some clue on how they might have been talking to each other. Maybe it just gushed out real fast. I don't know, but this was a good example of the punctuation. And this one down here, the Colorado Springs example, it's just a good way to emphasize how important all these things were to the father. All right, well, let's look at the other one. Now, one thing that we're going to be doing on this one is we're going to be looking at the diction, the syntax, imagery, and figurative language, because last week we talked about imagery and figurative language. This passage has lots of good word choice, so I went ahead and marked a lot of those. Now sometimes they overlap, so they're not all going to be marked green and they're not all going to be marked, but here's some examples. So camouflage, torment, hive spangled. Hive spangled means he's splotchy, red splotches on his skin. Could have been acne, could have been that it just has a red splotchy face, but I liked how this started. Okay. Stumbled through life, prodigiously ate, third-rate newspaperman, bereft, brimming of grief. All of these are good word choices. And then we're going to skip over syntax for a second. And imagery, some good images again. This could be a yellow one right here as well. Again and again, the father had broken his clenched grip and thrown him into pools, brooks, lakes, and surf. I mean, those are good examples of imagery. You could really see that. You could also see how his brother made fun of him and hissed, snot face, ugly pig, warthog, stupid, stink bomb, and pummeled him. That means he beat him and kicked on him until Coil curled up and on the floor, sniveling and crying. All right, and then you have some others, imagery where he's buried under a casement of flesh. How does that describe his body? A great damp loaf of body. Makes you think of a loaf of bread, doesn't it? Head shaped like a Crenshaw, which is a type of melon. And his features bunched as kissed fingertips. If you picture your fingertips together, all together, then you can kind of picture how his face might look like that. All right, and then so we've looked at imagery, we looked up at some figurative language. We did that last week. So let's look at some of the syntax. We talked about this one right here. Hive spangled, gut roaring with gas and cramp. He survived childhood. So this lets us know that he did not have a perfect childhood. He had it really rough, right? And then this one example here, there's lots of the repetition of failure. Failure to do this, failure to do that, and it's really his father's failure, and he's putting that on his son. So again, these are good examples. I will share this with you, and you can take a look at these examples. But this week we're going to be actually writing this writing prompt here, and so I wanted to give you as much prep as I could. Have a good one.